openSUSE, what do openSUSE have in common, is the view of the product managers for SUSE Linux Enterprise on openSUSE, what do we have in common, what do we share, what do we give each others? So what is SUSE giving back to the openSUSE community, what is the openSUSE community providing SUSE or SUSE Linux Enterprise specifically in terms of functionalities, features, and so on. So let's first take a little bit of a look what's behind openSUSE and SUSE Linux Enterprise. Two names that you can basically classify into portfolios. If we are talking about openSUSE, what do we mean if I say I'm an openSUSE member? What this means is I'm part of the openSUSE project, I'm part of the openSUSE community. If I'm running openSUSE, then I'm not talking about the project necessarily, I'm not talking about the community, but I'm talking about the distribution. Then some people, when they talk about openSUSE, we are talking about factory. We're talking about tumbleweed, education, and a whole bunch of other things that classify as openSUSE. So what I want to focus on is the project, the community, and a little bit of the distribution. And some of the other parts also come into play. And as with openSUSE, which can mean basically any of those terms, SUSE Linux Enterprise is a cover-up name for the larger part of the SUSE portfolio. So we got our server products, which are all part of the SUSE Linux Enterprise family for specific architectures and so on. We have extensions to those servers, which are also part of the SUSE Linux Enterprise family. We have support offerings, which are part of the SUSE Linux Enterprise family. We are talking about virtualization, where we have specific products and offerings. We're talking about desktop, where we have specific offerings. We're talking about management, where we have different offerings that not fall into the SUSE Linux Enterprise family, but are also part of the overall SUSE portfolio and also fall into managing SUSE Linux Enterprise systems. And last but not least, we have the cloud. So also SUSE Linux Enterprise can mean a lot of different things. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about the differences. And one of the major differences between openSUSE and SUSE Linux Enterprise is certifications. And that was one slide too much. Certifications are a big part why we have SUSE Linux Enterprise, and that's one of the major differentiations between openSUSE as the distribution and SUSE Linux Enterprise as an operating system. We have ISVs who are certifying software on SUSE Linux Enterprise server, desktop, depending on what you want to do or what the application is. We have hardware vendors that are certifying their hardware for usage with SUSE Linux Enterprise. All of this is not really there for openSUSE. So this is one of the key differences why there is a difference between openSUSE and SUSE Linux Enterprise when it comes to the distributions. Another rather largest part of a difference is the life cycle. And also the board mentioned this in the keynote, that the life cycle for openSUSE might change to something. Most likely it will not get shorter, I guess. Richard, you could say something more. So currently we have an openSUSE release cycle of every 8 months, there's a new openSUSE release. 13.1, 13.2, 13.3, 14.1, 14.2, 14.3, and so on. The life cycle of each of those releases is 18 months. So 2 new releases plus 2 additional months. We got other projects or other parts of openSUSE that aim at different things. We got Tumbleweed, which is basically somewhere in between because it's getting stable package upgrades in between this life cycle of one openSUSE release. And after those 18 months, you don't get any maintenance anymore, you don't get any security fixes and so on. With SUSE Linux Enterprise, this looks a little bit different. What we have in terms of a life cycle is we got a 10 plus 3 year life cycle. So every major release we are doing is supported for up to 13 years. 10 years of general support and 3 years of extended support. So we are doing one major release like SUSE Linux Enterprise 11, and that will be available for 10 years. The biggest difference that we have with openSUSE is we are not doing new releases like an openSUSE release, but we are doing service packs. Those service packs can be seen as something like a 13.1 and 30.2, but there is a little bit of a rather largest difference in terms of what we do with the service pack. With the service pack, during those 10 years of life cycle, we keep API and ABI stable. So if you compile an application on the first release of a major release, you can still run it without the need to recompile it on the last service pack of this major release. So while we do new releases every now and then, roughly every 18 months, there is still the compatibility to the previous release in one major release family, which is a little bit different to what openSUSE does with every new release, where every release can contain breakages in terms of API and ABI. So if you have a package that you build on openSUSE 11.1, it might or it might not run on a 13.1. If you do the same thing for SUSE Linux Enterprise, it will still run. In addition to that, we are also doing regular major releases, so new major versions, that where every one of them has 13 years of life cycle. So you got 13 years for SUSE Linux Enterprise 11, and we are going to be releasing SUSE Linux Enterprise 12. That will also be 13 years. There's an overlapping period of those major releases where you can pick and choose, much like with openSUSE releases, where you have 13.1 with those 18 months. Then there's 13.2, and so on. But there's also a lot that we have in common with openSUSE. And one of the major parts of that is building the product. So SUSE Linux Enterprise, or openSUSE, is the upstream for SUSE Linux Enterprise. And we are using the same technologies. We are using the open build servers to build our packages for the enterprise distribution. We're using OpenQA to do QA work, all the same as with openSUSE. We are basing on, at one point in time, certain package versions, certain packages itself from openSUSE, and are creating our SUSE Linux Enterprise out of this. But we are diverging at some point in time because we keep the stability. We are providing an enterprise product. We need to maintain certifications, so we can't break API, ABI at one point in time. We need to maintain this for our customers. So at some point in time, we are diverging away from openSUSE when it comes to package versions, package features, and so on. But openSUSE is still our development platform for new features. And we're using the same tools. And I borrowed a small slide from last year's session on SUSE Linux Enterprise and openSUSE that outlines a little bit what we mean with we are diverging at some point in time with our major release. So we are planning for our SLE 12 release. It's based on somewhere in between 13.1 and the to-be released 13.2. We are taking packages from openSUSE. We're creating our enterprise product. We're giving something back to openSUSE, what we did with the quality assurance testing and so on, into 13.2. We're taking some parts of 13.2 also into this released product, but we're also taking parts of 13.2 into the development of our next service pack. And of course, we're also then again returning that into openSUSE but there will be a point in time, maybe 13.3 or a Service Pack 2 for SUSE Linux Enterprise 12, where we cannot that easily really take parts of openSUSE and create our new service pack out of this, because there might be upgrades to kernel, glibc, GCC, you name it, that don't allow us to do that anymore because we would break something in our stack. And I'm way too fast. So let me talk a little bit slower and let me talk a little bit more. And by the way, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me at any point in time. I like to run with a microphone, and I like to keep the video guys busy. So we are also facing common issues. One of the things that every open source distribution, every open source project is facing, that we're all based on some upstream project. And this upstream project might make changes that we don't really like. Like, let's say they are changing the API, they are making a minor release that is breaking backward compatibility inside of the major release. These are problems that openSUSE is facing, because then also something might go wrong there. And those are also issues that we are facing. And of course, we're also facing them with our upstream project. We're also facing them with openSUSE. If openSUSE makes a move, we also need to handle that as SUSE Linux Enterprise. And it's hard to influence decisions that are happening in the upstream project, so upstream also for openSUSE. And as we're talking about a community is not everyone shares the same opinion. So the opinions inside the communities also go from one end to the other end. You got people that don't want to change anything. Some people might want to change everything. You need to deal and handle with a lot of different people that have a lot of different opinions, ways they want to go, things they want to do. And those are all the things that we are also facing with SUSE Linux Enterprise. So not only with the upstream projects, but we also have customers, and we have customers ranging from the ones that need or want change immediately to the ones that, let's not touch our system. Give us one version and support us for eternity with it. But please don't do any updates. Even if you promise us to don't break API, ABI, and so on, they don't want that. So while we need to deal with the community on the one hand side, on the upstream side, we also have our customers, and we're all part of the community. So what are the differences in total that we have, in addition to what I said? We have the package selection that is different. And it's good that it's different. openSUSE ships with, I don't know how many packages. Maybe someone here knows. 7,500. Okay. So, and SUSE Linux Enterprise release ships with roughly 2,800 packages. So we have a rather big difference there as well. But that's also, we need to pick what our customers need, what our customers want. We also need to pick what we can support. We need to pick what is mature enough to keep it going, because as I said, we're talking about, no, not talking about 18 months and then we could drop something, like it is the case with openSUSE. If some project is in there or some package is in there, it might not be in the next release. But we can't do that with SUSE Linux Enterprise, because we need to keep everything up for those 13 years. The life cycle as one big difference, and the one where we are diverging at some point in time. Certifications, I already mentioned that. But another big part are also defaults that are different. So defaults when it comes to the desktop environment, where openSUSE is in a default installation installing KDE. SUSE Linux Enterprise in a default installation is installing GNOME. We are different there. Default file system, also a topic where we have differences. SUSE Linux Enterprise is using ext3, openSUSE is using ext4. So Btrfs is a file system where we are very interested in, but it's not default in SUSE Linux Enterprise. It is supported with SUSE Linux Enterprise, and it's a good example for another thing, and that is that openSUSE is benefiting from SUSE Linux Enterprise efforts. Because if you think of Btrfs and you think of tools like the snapshotting tool Snapper, that was developed for SUSE Linux Enterprise, but it was first in openSUSE, because openSUSE is our upstream. So we are putting things into openSUSE to give back to the community, but also, of course, to benefit from someone testing it, a little bit more coverage on the testing side, so it's not all glory to we are so good people, we are giving it to you. We are, of course, also expecting something in return, but things like that go to openSUSE first. And also when it comes to patches that we developed for SUSE Linux Enterprise, they also, in many cases, go to openSUSE either first or at least once they go to SUSE Linux Enterprise. I will run to you, Michael.
So SLE12 is using ext3?
The question is if SLE12 will be using ext3 by default. I can't tell you what default SUSE Linux Enterprise 12 will have at this point in time. Sorry, Jos? Okay. But you could make some educated guesses on what the defaults will be in SUSE Linux Enterprise 12. Another difference, and I already talked about the hardware certification stuff, but it's also QA. We have people that we pay to do in QA, like Richard. He's one of our QA guys. And we're doing this QA to ensure that we have the enterprise quality for the product. But we are also getting partner QA on SUSE Linux Enterprise. What does partner QA mean? I talked about the hardware certification. So we're working together with all major hardware partners to ensure that our SUSE Linux Enterprise distribution runs on their hardware. Why are we doing this specifically? Most of the hardware vendors put their patches upstream into the Linux kernel. So if you are running on a late or a more recent Linux kernel, your hardware will run. No issues with that. This applies to basically all laptops that you buy. The patches are upstream. If you have a recent kernel version, then you should have almost no hardware issues. But we are not using the latest Linux kernel with SUSE Linux Enterprise. We are backporting drivers to the kernel version that we are shipping. Like with SUSE Linux Enterprise 11, we are still at a kernel version that reads 3.0. Currently, I think it's 3.12 or something like that. So there are quite some releases in between that happened for the Linux kernel. And when new features came in, but we're backporting those drivers specifically, but also features and functionality to this older base while maintaining this API and ABI stability. And for that, we also need partners to do testing. Another quite big difference, and I'm currently competing with this multi-arch track, is the architectures that are supported or that the distribution is available for. There is also a difference between openSUSE and SUSE Linux Enterprise. Who of you has a power machine at home? Wow, impressive. Typically no one raises their hand, but now I got a question that I hope really no one raises their hand. Who has a System Z at home? At home? Really? So those are two architectures where SUSE Linux Enterprise is available for, but openSUSE is not available for, at least not that I would know of. So obviously, because no one has an IBM System Z in his basement, unless he really has too much money, so they are only at corporations, they are only at enterprises, and those want support for their systems, so they go with SUSE Linux Enterprise. On the other hand, there are also architectures where openSUSE is built for, but SUSE Linux Enterprise is not available for. I'm competing with ARM. Yeah, I was kernel space SMP on ARM track as well. And ARM is something where openSUSE is available for. You can get images for ARM CPUs for openSUSE. But you can currently not get SUSE Linux Enterprise on ARM because that's, again, nothing for the enterprise yet. ARM, there are no real ARM servers available. There is no need for us as a company to provide a product for this architecture. But we are supporting the community with doing a port of openSUSE to ARM. So after the differences, what is left, and I think I covered almost anything of that list as well already for openSUSE. There is bug fixing, also additional testing that openSUSE receives from SUSE Linux Enterprise, development of specific things that we are doing as SUSE as a company in openSUSE. I talked about Snapper, so SUSE Linux Enterprise features, but also Just as the system management tool that we have. We provide funding for people to come to the openSUSE conference, for example. We sponsor the openSUSE conference. And we also have a lot of packages that we employ that are building packages for openSUSE. What do we get? We get a stable basis for our development, and we basically also get the development environment for most of our engineers. We also get packaging because we also take packages that the community builds and integrate them into our product. And we have an easy way to work together with upstream projects like the Linux kernel or the desktop environments and so on, where we have an easy way to talk to them via openSUSE as the project where we can be closer to upstream than we might be with SUSE Linux Enterprise. And last but not least, as we are having the same tools on openSUSE and SUSE Linux Enterprise, we also get familiarity with the SUSE ecosystem. But one thing is very important, and that is that openSUSE is a project, and SUSE Linux Enterprise is a product. So while we have something in common, there are a lot of differences, but you really can't compare the two in a good way, because we got the community project where the community can basically do what they want. Now, the community contains a lot of SUSE employees, and SUSE is paying a lot of people to work in the openSUSE community. So there might be a glitch to it, because in every community, the one who does something is the one who points into a direction and maybe also moves everything into that direction. SUSE Linux Enterprise, on the other hand, is a product, and with a product, we define what is going in there, we define what is needed. We are making basically the rules for it. And now I'm really way too fast and did say less than I expected me to say. But now to the fun part, to the interactive part. Now it's the time to ask almost anything you ever wanted to know from a SUSE Product Manager. And no one wants to know anything.
So in your slides, a few slides before, you mentioned that most of the development goes to the openSUSE project, right? So how does this help you differentiate your product? I mean, if I get all of the new development in the openSUSE project, why would I buy SUSE Enterprise?
That's a very good question. But I mean, that's the question on why do I buy an open source project, or what do I buy if I buy something that is based on open source? Because all of our development happens in the open. We have a very strict rule, and we only break it for very specific and good reasons, and that is everything that goes into the SUSE Linux Enterprise product needs to be open source. This specifically applies to drivers for hardware and so on, where everything needs to be open source. So there is no real differentiator between different enterprise distributions, because all could be the same feature and functionality wise. Now there are differences in the release lifecycle and so on. And of course you could go with openSUSE, but there's a little bit of a caveat there, and that is if you go for openSUSE or any other unpaid Linux distribution, you have a very specific life cycle. Like with openSUSE, 18 months. After those 18 months, you need to migrate your system. During that migration, your application that you are running on top of it might break. So this gives you a little bit of a downtime. That's nothing that you really want to do, at least when you're in an enterprise or in a mission-critical environment. That's why we say we keep the API and ABI stable, so you can migrate from one service pack to the next service pack without the fear of this interruption. The other thing is you buy support from us. You are not buying the code. You're getting support, and you get guarantees for fixes, for security fixes, and that's why you buy SUSE Linux Enterprise. And security fixes are a good example. I think it never happened, but theoretically, as it's all open source, there might be an issue, and you can report this issue for package XYZ, and no one cares. So no one is fixing your issue. If this is critical to your business, that's an issue. With us, if it's a part of our product, and that's why I mentioned this rather largest difference when it comes to package size and package selection, because we really pick what we know we can support, and we can provide fixes, we can provide security fixes for it if there is an issue. As I said, this basically never has happened, but a security fix could also mean you need to upgrade to something that breaks against something. And then there's the certification area. If you are running, let's pick my best example, let's say you are running an SAP application. You want to make sure that it's running on the distribution, on the system that you have there. We have the certification. SAP will most likely not certify any unpaid Linux distributions because they are changing too fast. We are having a new major release every roughly 5 years, and we have 10 years of stability, so there's not really much effort to certifying something on the distribution. And that's what SUSE Linux Enterprise is for. Any more questions?
There's been a bunch of discussion I've seen recently on the idea of creating a SUSE Linux Enterprise oriented distribution that has free updates for all, that in such a way that would popularize it and make it more accessible for developers and hackers and so on, in a possibly similar way to other competitor distributions out there that might be based on enterprise code. CentOS. But the thing is, I mean, I've heard, I was kind of reluctant to bring CentOS up because I've heard suggestions that kind of lean in that direction but actually take a completely fresh take on it as well. And I was wondering if you could maybe summarize the current thinking on that, or like say a bit more about the the ideas that are out there, and maybe what is the likelihood of any of these things actually happening?
So I can't say what's the likelihood for ideas that are out there. I can't say what is happening because I don't know. So yes, there are ideas out there for that specific purpose, and yes, this is something that we're really considering, because we need to realize that a lot of development efforts from contributors for some upstream projects is not happening on either SUSE Linux Enterprise nor openSUSE, unfortunately. So this is of course something that we want to address and that we need to address from a SUSE Linux Enterprise perspective, because at one point in time we might end up with not having those 9,000 certified applications anymore, because everyone is developing on other platforms and is not caring to port to our platform. There is a gap between openSUSE and SUSE Linux Enterprise when it comes to life cycle, when it comes to covering specific functionality, specific use case scenarios that some users might have. And we are thinking about different ways to do that. So either putting something in between the two, for whatever that might be, or pushing something from SUSE Linux Enterprise a little bit more down into the direction of openSUSE, or pushing openSUSE a little bit more into the direction of SUSE Linux Enterprise to close this gap. We don't know what we will do, and with we, this means the community, not really SUSE. But of course, SUSE as part of the community. So if you have any good idea what you think might be a solution to that, or what might be a good thing to do for the community, for us, I'm sure that we want to know about it, and then we want to talk about it, and we want to see what we can do. We are definitely supportive for ideas, how to improve the situation. We're talking a lot about this, but there's no certain way how we want to approach it at this point in time. Any other questions? Nothing. Really? Then I was really too quick. I should have gone for the 45-minute slot. Oh, Michael, thank you.
So we talked about the value in SLE, which I'm sure there's a lot of, but we didn't talk about price and upsell. So, you know, sell me a beautiful SLE with some amazing support package. What can I buy from you, and why should I?
I'm not in sales. But yet everyone's in sales. So what you can buy from us are different support levels. You can buy basic support, which is just covering maintenance updates. That's what you might want if you really just need the life cycle of the product. We're offering a standard support, which is a 5x12 support package, so 5 days a week, 12 hours time window depending on the time zone that you're in. So it's not 12 hours starting 7 a.m. Central European time and ending 7 p.m. Central European time, but it's 12 hours depending on where you are, where you can call our support and you will get help with the issues you are facing. You will get PTFs, so package fixes for issues you've encountered, but you will also get configuration support and so on. Then there's priority support, which is 24/7. So a follow the sun service desk. Whenever you have an issue, you can call, you can open a ticket, and someone will help you. They come with different SLAs in terms of response times and so on. Don't ask me what they are. I would need to look it up. And in terms of pricing, that's a very complicated matter, but you can look on our webpage on suse.com/products/ either server or desktop, and there is a how to buy section that covers that part pretty well, because I can only tell you one price. Any other questions? Michael? Yeah, sure. As I said, anything you ever wanted to know from a SUSE PM.
So it seems to me that there's a balance between how much you give away to build the community and if you give away everything, obviously you don't get any money to fund any development. So you go bust if you give everything away, and potentially you go bust if you give nothing away. What data do you have to inform the decision in between of how much you give away? Is it a finger in the air? Is it looking at what competitors do? What possible basis can you make good numerate decisions there?
It's magic. That's a very good question. So when it comes to features, functionality, code that we provide into openSUSE and into upstream projects, it's something that we need for our enterprise product. So we have customer demand, partner demand for it. So in order to make money, we need to develop it. So we are giving it back to the community because it's open source. So we give it away. When it comes to funding people to travel to the openSUSE conference, when it comes to sponsoring the openSUSE conference or other events and so on, I'm sure there are certain measures that we take into account how much money we invest into that. I don't know how this is actually done. I'm also not sure that I really want to know what black magic is hidden behind that. But I'm sure that we take certain measures that say, okay, we can put that much money into the openSUSE project. And we do gain a lot from the openSUSE project. So I don't have the feeling that we are leaving money on the table by investing into openSUSE or by paying employees to work on openSUSE. Anything else you want to know? Doesn't need to be related to what I talked about. Finally, it works. You just have to keep asking people to ask questions and someone will come up with one.
Yeah, you mentioned you want to keep ABI and API stability in SLE. And does that mean that you won't allow extensions to the API or ABI, or do you allow extensions, not removals? Do you allow compatible changes but not incompatible, or is it a strict no changes policy?
I think it would be impossible to enforce a no changes policy. So when it comes to not changing API and ABI, this means the existing API and ABI needs to remain unchanged. So if you have a function call that in some newer version gets an additional parameter, that's not possible unless there is a default for this parameter. So unless you can call another function that still accepts the old amount of arguments and it's still functioning in the same way. If there is a new API or ABI call available, that can be added. That's not an issue because this won't break anything, but it will provide something in addition, and that's fine, and that's what we do a lot. And that's also what happens with new drivers, new features when it comes to power management or things like that that go on in the Linux kernel that add new functionality. That's, of course, nothing that we want to prohibit, and there are certain applications from ISVs that require specific service pack levels to run because they rely on some of the newer API and ABI that is available. Any other questions? No? In this case, thanks a lot. And you just received 19 minutes of your time back. Thanks.